Greetings, I'm Zachary Hepner. I'm pleased to share this Dvar Torah with you for Parashat Achrei Mot-Kedoshim. The million-dollar question: why are the arayot taught at the end of Acharei Mot and repeated in the end of Qedoshim? That is, the forbidden sexual relations are taught and then repeated. So peculiar that the repeat is often ignored. The million-dollar mistake that Bible scholars make is that the first half of Leviticus through Acharei Mot is called the priestly code, and the second half of Leviticus, starting with Qedoshim, is called the holiness code, named after the law Qedoshim tihiyo. You shall make yourselves holy, because I, your God, am holy. Don't judge a book by its cover. The book of Leviticus is a single book, and Bible scholars, by the way, some of my best friends are Bible scholars. I even like many of them. But the baal mesoret certainly felt a connection between the supposed priestly code and the holiness code, enough that the parashiot are together Acharei Mot Kedoshim. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was a late Tana, the last of the generation of Tanaitic literature, known as a miracle worker and a holy enough Tanaitic character that the legends about him are miraculous indeed. His most famous quote is in the final part of the last Mishnah in Masechet Sotah, also made even more famous by Rabbi Luzzatto, the 17th century Ramchal, in his book Mesilat Yesharim. It's a causal spiritual ladder. In other words, attaining one rung on his ladder leads and is causal to the next spiritual rung. The first rung in his ladder is working on or possessing the trait of zrizut. That's the first trait. It could be translated to performance with alacrity. It could also be translated as that overused contemporary word called mindfulness. The final rung in the ladder leads to the highest spiritual levels with the Holy Spirit, miracles, and prophecy. These rungs are all causal and necessary foundations for anyone's healthy spiritual development. There are different versions of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair's ladder. Our Vilna Shas has a different order than the Ramchal's. Nonetheless, tahara is always before kedusha. That is, spiritual cleanliness is a prerequisite before the stage that's called holiness. With this model, I reject the dichotomy between the priestly code and the holiness code. The entire Sefer Shemot is a spiritual journey starting with slavery and tumah, with different developmental stages. The journey to Sinai required the miraculous redemption in Bishalach and in Bo. The layers and meaning in the tabernacle is a stage where we make the special place. Vayikra gives meaning to our special place. The death of Nadav and Avihu break. They create a break. Before we were discussing the service to God. Now we will focus on purifying our innards, purifying ourselves. Acharei Mot culminates with the most special person entering the most special place on the most special day. Is that the end? No. Don't be like Shabtai Tzvi or Jacob Frank. Be careful of your spiritual highs and the liberties that redemptive personalities might take. After the purification of Shmini, Tazria, Metzora, Acharei Mot, we enter Parashat Qedoshim. This is part of the next stage in the spiritual ladder. You were pure, but now the Almighty demands of you to be like Him, to be holy. You may have thought that the greatest goal is to be the high priest in the Holy of Holies on the Shabbaton. No, there's a greater stage. Imitatio Deus. God is holy. In the plural, you must be holy too. The holiness code is not a break from the priestly code. It's the next stage in Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair's ladder. And again, don't be like Shabtai Tzvi or Jacob Frank. Don't make the grave sexual mistakes that the supposed holy redemptive figures have taken during their false redemptive journeys. The sexual traps in the state of purity is not the same sexual trap in the state of holiness. Perhaps had Jacob Frank talked to the late Stan Lee, he would have had one less orgy. In the closing narration of the 1962 Amazing Fantasy number 15, it says, "With great power comes great responsibility." Each step in the spiritual ladder comes with great responsibility, and the Torah emphasizes that by repeating the arayot at the end of Parashat Qedoshim. This is no surprise that the high priest in the following parsha has a life with even more restrictions. To conclude, I respect the name priestly code and holiness code, but they are not only connected, they are necessarily connected. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.